Good morning. Welcome to the March 26, 2015 meeting of the City of Palo Alto's Historic Resources Board. Call to order.
Chair Kohler,
Here.
Vice Chair McKinnon,
Here.
Board Member Bernstein,
Here.
Board Member Bowell, Board Member Vandenberg,
Here.
Board Member Ezekiel, Board Member Wimmer. Here. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any, the staff today is Matthew Weintraub and Amy French, letting everybody know who you are. This is awfully loud. Isn't this loud or not? Is it not loud? Are there any oral communications? Anybody here today would like to speak to any item? Seeing none. Any agenda changes, deletions?
None.
Okay. So first on our list is 757 College Avenue, proposal to remove the property from the City of Palo Alto Historic Resources Inventory. The property is currently designated as a Category 3 site/structure. The applicant requests a continuance of the meeting until April 9th.
Yeah.
So that's been continued.
Well, we like to save the city money, so the way to do that is to move second and take a vote that continues it, so we don't have to re-advertise it for that date, April 9th, if you will. Thank you.
Someone like to make a motion that we continue this item?
I move we continue this item until April the 9th,
Okay.
2015.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, that's been motioned by Chairperson Bunnenberg and seconded by Chairperson McKinnon. Okay.
Let's vote.
Oh, yeah, we have to vote. Correct. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes with 2 members absent. No minutes today to approve, no public hearing. So we're down to board items. Today is discussion of items from Council/HRB joint meeting in the future for the May 11th, 2015 program that we're going to meet with the council. I'll just list the 5 that we're going to talk about, and at least they're the headlines on your list. First item would be the city's preservation program. Second one is rehabilitation successes. Item C, HRB recommendations. D, city council member questions and comments. And E, public comments. And then at the very end here, we'll have a discussion of the Mills Act as part of that. So, so it's the city preservation program. Okay, staff.
Thank you, Chair Kohler. So this is a continuation of an item that we started at the last meeting, actually, or several meetings ago, to prepare for the joint HRB City Council meeting. And what I've done is provided in your packets a printed copy of the draft presentation so that we can go through and you can provide any, you can make notes and provide any comments. And I'd like to ask the board how they would like to proceed with this item. We could kind of go through and look at each slide, if you will, and discuss it, or if the board wants to. I should mention that there's been some reorganization to the presentation since you last saw it. So, yes, this is the latest and greatest. So it might benefit the board for us to go through, perhaps not taking too much time, but kind of going through each slide and discussing what the intent of that slide is, and is it actually providing that information in a way that we want it to do so. You know, of course, it's up to the board if they would like to simply jump in and start discussing any of the specific information.
Well, one initial, like on, you go, the overall view. So these are the slides you've prepared so far to flash up in our meeting.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so first one seems okay. It says overview. Says I'm flipping through here, I don't know, but it's a lot of words.
It is, it is.
Is there some way, how do we approach, I mean, if we were to go through and read everything in this page, we're used up a lot of our time. Is any suggestions on how to work on this? I mean, well, actually, will the council get this before they come?
That is, if I may, that is the practice when we do provide PowerPoints to council. They would get a paper copy, they would have it at places. So, you know, all of the words on this page don't need to be said. Conversely, we can have more images, and these can be, you know, footnotes for the person presenting. You know, the council doesn't expect to see every word that we say, and that's actually not as entertaining as, you know, having more pictures.
So I'm just kind of talking on top, so it may be that the overview would be quickly done. That might make sense to read. But then it comes to city's preservation program, you know, there's like 8 or 9 topics, and then as it goes on, there's quite a few words and points. I'm open for suggestions. I mean, I don't think you expected us to present each page and have them talk about it and present each page. Is that because that just won't happen in that amount of time? But anybody, Martin always has good ideas. Okay.
I'm thinking, I mean, I think it would help my sense of organization for what we're going to be doing when we meet with the council is to invite Matt actually to go page by page. Matt's a very organized person, I think, and he can just go through all these items very quickly. Just, I mean, it helps me to actually hear the words, but I think we're not going to discuss every bullet point on all the 12 pages.
No,
so.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Actually, I was leading up to that.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe staff should just go through this.
Yeah, because I mean, Matt kind of put these together.
No,
I mean,
he has, yeah.
because he's for organization. It helps me in my mind.
I'm not arguing.
Yeah, okay, good.
I was leading up to that maybe staff should just run through this
Yeah,
quickly.
that'd be my suggestion.
I was just going through it, you know, and looking at all the various pages of all. It really, okay, why don't you,
Thank you, and your comments are very well received, and we're definitely trying to find the right balance between presenting information and making it a good presentation as well. So, so please let me know your thoughts on each one of these. So, so the overview is really just the organization of how the presentation will run. Staff would present the first bullet point, City's Preservation Program, and then the idea is that HRB members would then step in and present case studies, which would be the rehabilitation successes, or if we want to call them preservation successes, I'm not sure how the HRB wants to refer to that. And then HRB recommendations would also be, you know, any concerns or issues that the HRB wants to raise, and any potential recommendations to the council. And then, of course, council member and questions and comments and public comments. Yes.
I just thought I'd ask one quick question. Is it going to be in this room back here, or is it in the council, or
I
how?
believe it'll be here in the council chambers.
Oh, with the microphones and everything?
Yes.
Because they're up here with us.
Typically, that is the case. The whole group sits up on the dais there.
Cool.
That's a lot of people, though, so I'm not sure. I'll have to ask.
Yeah,
if
the
they're-
last one I remember was just in the little room that used to be in here.
Right, and that's going through some changes. You know, it may be, and we should find out about that. There is that new community room. Maybe there's going to be they're going to use that venue.
There'll be 16 of us,
Well, plus everybody else, and it's open to the public.
but 16 people up here.
community room, the glass room? Okay.
Well,
We'll
it
just
might be-
verify, it'll likely be in the glass room is what Diana is just
I
mentioning, rather than in the chamber. So we'll ascertain that well before the date.
Well, it is a modest issue. If you know, we met in that meeting, and that room is, yeah, it's a nice room. But okay, we have. It's not for another month, right?
May 11th.
May 11th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Continue. Sorry for interruption. Beth, go ahead.
One thing that I'm very interested in is to look at our preservation ordinances and decisions, and look at how we treat potentially California eligible properties particularly in light of CEQA, whether we are performing as we should in terms of some properties that might really have great California significance. And so I think that we might do some thinking along those lines. That it's been a very long time since this preservation ordinance has been was adopted, and
I think that's part of our whole program, is to get, our little meeting we had in there, that was one of the themes, is updating our whole situation. So, okay, Dave.
Thank you. And yeah, I think so. A couple of points have been brought up that we have, we have the ordinance, we have the survey, and those are, different components of the program. So, so if we look at the next slide, which is basically the city's preservation program, what I've done is kind of bullet pointed, these are the items that actually make up the city's preservation program, and some of those we've mentioned. So it kind of starts with the comprehensive plan. That's the overarching goals and policies of the city. Of course, the Historic Resources Board and the ordinance itself, the inventory, the application review standards that are in the ordinance and that have been adopted by the council, the preservation incentives that are included in the ordinance, and then also our certified local government status and CEQA review. So these are, so there's a lot of different components related to the program, and the question is, how do we present all this information and what's the most pertinent? So as we move forward, what I've done is I've listed out the 10 policies related to historic character that are in the comprehensive plan, and I certainly don't intend to read through these. I just wanted to make them available to let the HRB members and the council know or remind them that we do have policies that promote historic preservation and conservation of resources. So yes. These are in the land use and community design element of the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is on the website, and there's also, I'm sure, printed copies available at various city offices. So I am definitely open to suggestions as to what the best way to convey this information is without having 500 words on the paper. I do recall in our sort of preliminary meeting with the chair, the vice chair, and the mayor and the vice mayor, there was some interest in addressing at least the comprehensive plan and having an understanding that the comprehensive plan relates to the preservation program. So, so perhaps it's a matter of summarizing these policies and then just listing out their numbers. I'm not sure. Okay. So yeah, and so the intention right now was that we would list them and have them in the handout, and they would be shown on the screen, but I wouldn't read through them. I would just sort of say, and we have 10 comprehensive plan policies that are the overarching policies that promote and recommend preservation and retention of resources. So to address Chair Kohler's comment about not reading through all the information, that would be one way to.
I did see one thing that might be of interest is like promote adaptive use of old buildings. Maybe, because I have a collection that I had, in there of some photos of buildings that a lot of my photos are prior to the building being worked on. So I was thinking Beth and I might be able to get some photos. I just go around, maybe the few I have, maybe I got new photos saying, okay, here's what it was, here's what it is now. At least it can see some pretty instant results. I'm just trying to think if there's.
Well, and we do have a section that's meant to do that, actually. It's called Rehabilitation Successes, and that would be presented sort of after I run through the different components of the program. Then the idea is that you and other board members would then present these rehabilitation success stories, which could include before and after photographs and things like that.
should that come right after this comprehensive discussion?
That's a good question. Initially, the way in our meeting with the mayor and the vice mayor, I think it was sort of identified that staff should deliver a presentation at the beginning, 10 or so minutes, kind of running through the different components, and then we kind of come back to the board members, and they could then present the success stories and things like that. So we certainly, I can guarantee that we won't spend as long as we're spending on each of these individual slides in the actual presentation. We will be moving along quite quickly.
Chair Kohler.
Yes.
One sort of sample that we might think about in terms of California important properties, the state of California registered historic landmarks includes that site of the co-invention of the integrated circuits down on 844 East Charleston. So that might be a sample of a prime example of something that is really not.
I can certainly get a photo of that pretty easily. I go to Orchard Oak Supply all the time, so.
Get the big rocks and the markers.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. You have to go in the morning, that's when the sun is there.
Could I ask, are there any other specific comprehensive plan policies that the board members think should be emphasized over others? So rather than sort of presenting all 10, are there certain ones that I should highlight or make note of that the board members may want to refer to again later in their presentations?
Just as I was reading here, number L56 is in the news lately. It says reinforce the scale and character of University Avenue downtown, promote the preservation of significant historic buildings. So, I mean, there's been all this in the paper about the big buildings. Martin?
Yeah, Chair Kohler, thanks. I would agree. Policy L56, that's been in local media, and council's been talking about that, and public's been talking about that. So L56, I think, great topic for sure. Yeah, L56, I agree.
Well, I think it's good to have these in here. They're kind of the guiding principles for the HRB that goes back to their fundamentals. So.
Exactly, yeah, the overarching policy framework.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, in a sense, this is kind of a nice little packet to have at our meetings because it kind of summarizes our whole role as a board member. It's kind of a little guidebook. So, okay.
Could I just point out policy L57 may relate to an issue that some board members have brought up, I believe board member Bernstein, develop incentives for the retention and rehabilitation of buildings with historic merit in all zones. And I think, if I recall, board member Bernstein has mentioned that the offering of incentives to buildings is not all the buildings in the inventory necessarily have the full range of incentives offered to them throughout the entire city. And that might be, so I just asked the board if that might be one that they want to highlight as well.
I would vote yes for that question. Yeah. I mean,
Well, in some way, they're all important, but these two right now.
Yeah, incentives are great. As you know, categories 1 and 2 have certain incentives that applicants can apply for. Well, let's extend it to all. And then it's in all zones, including a non-historic zone, non-historic district, right?
That's the intention of the policy, I believe.
Yeah. So when you say all zones, could that be well, what zone is it? So who cares what zone is it? If it's historic merit, if it's on the category. With the question, with all zones, would that add some question or confusion to
I think he's saying,
all historic buildings?
can you delete the zones right there and just put a period after merit?
Certainly. I think the reason zones is included was really to reference all zoning districts, to make
Okay.
it clear that it's meant to refer to all
Maybe-
zoning districts.
Okay,
Maybe-
that sounds fine, I'm sorry. The reason I would ask that is that right now the ordinance talks about historic district, I think it says, within historic district, you know. So the word zone, could that possibly confuse a reader to say, oh, that must mean a historic zone? So
Well,
just- yeah.
one suggestion I was, instead of just the word zones, you could write, like you just said, zoning
Oh, zoning
districts.
districts. Yeah, yeah.
Districts.
Okay,
Zoning districts.
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
That might help it, because I'm not sure everyone's familiar with the word zone, but a district might, well, anyway, yeah, that'd be good, okay.
Okay, that was just my quick, yeah, so if
Yeah, I
L56,
think
F57, I think there's enough, there's a whole city council meeting, HRB meeting right there, yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Would it, parts of the city be, in all parts of the city? Be a better?
Well, all zone, if you said all zone districts, that's R1 and not, yeah.
Well, I think, I don't think we're necessarily talking about how to revise the comprehensive plan policy. I think,
Oh, yeah,
I think we recognize that it might not be entirely clear, but I think the intention is clearly that it's saying,
Yeah.
make incentives available to
Understand.
properties with merit citywide.
Yeah.
And so I think, in terms of, further recommendations, that might be something.
Sure.
And I actually have a slide further on
Okay,
that
good.
looks at the different incentives, and we can then.
Matt's bringing up a good point, is that it's not change the wording of the comprehensive plan.
Let's wait for the comprehensive
Yeah.
plan update process to do
Yeah.
that.
I just think the addition of the zoning districts tends to help widen what it really means. Instead of zones, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
is it a parking zone or this, but it's a,
It's a good
that's all I would
clarification.
suggest.
I might offer, we could, because of this format, we could have a footnote that, has a 1, you put 1 down there, and it could say, i.e. citywide, that's
Oh,
what we
perfect.
mean.
Yeah,
You know.
that's,
Well, I-
It's not
True.
in the language of the policy, but so as not to get weighted down in this.
I
exactly.
think we have to be careful about interpreting policies that are in the comprehensive plan.
Sure.
I mean, I think really the cleanest way to do is present it as it is
Yes.
stated in the
I agree,
comprehensive
yeah.
plan. And,
Yeah, I was being colored by making it clear from my own mind, so, okay. Thank you.
So I think what it looks like policies L56, 57, and 58 are the ones to sort of highlight in my presentation, and I'll do that. Thank you. Next slide is the Historic Resources Board roles and responsibilities. This is as found in the administrative section of the municipal code, and I think it's good to just understand what the broader responsibilities of the HRB are, which is to advise property owners of advice and guidance to property owners in terms of design, to make design recommendations to the ARB as well as staff and other city bodies, and recommend designations to the city council, and other functions as delegated by the council. And then if we look at the historic preservation ordinance itself, it outlines some more specific duties of the HRB in terms of providing review for exterior alterations to sites and structures that are listed on the city's inventory. And those include the category 1 through 4 buildings in the downtown and in the districts, as well as category 1 and 2 buildings elsewhere in the city. And the ordinance also provides for staff level review of minor exterior alterations. So, yes.
Through to the chair, Fuller. In downtown, is downtown defined anywhere in the ordinance?
It's the downtown commercial district, which is also called the CD district.
Okay, thank you.
And next we have a slide that shows the properties that are actually in the city inventory, the properties that are referenced under Chapter 16.49 or the ordinance. And so we see that there's 2 districts, Professorville, which has almost 200 properties, smaller district called Ramona Street, which is actually right across the street from us here, and all the other category 1 through 4 buildings in the city, which are a total of about 411 properties. And there are some outliers that are not shown on this map because we zoomed in a little closer to the downtown area. In terms of the application review standards, just moving on to the next slide, the municipal code sets out some very general standards in terms of how the HRB is to review design design changes. Basically, that the exterior architectural characteristics should not be harmed, and that the historical and architectural value should be maintained, and that within districts that there be a harmony and compatibility among buildings and properties. To assist with the HRB, yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to wait till you finish before I ask the chair. So what you're just reading right now actually relates then to policy L56. I believe.
Yes, it would. It would relate to
The historic
L56
districts,
and probably L58 as well. Or I should say perhaps my next point that, in order to assist the HRB in conducting review, the council adopted the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, which allow for flexible adaptations and additions and things like that, which I would say relate to policy L58 as well. So I would say the information on this slide relates to both of those policies. And then moving on to preservation incentives. So if we think in terms of sticks and carrots, the sticks, if you will, are the review requirements under the ordinance, and the carrots are the incentives that are offered to owners in order to preserve, so that there's a fair balance between the regulation and the incentives. And so these are the incentives that are currently offered under the code. First of all, the State Historic Building Code is accessible or available to all historic properties in the city, and that allows for flexible alternatives to meeting building and safety codes. It may, for instance, obviate the need for sprinklers or the need to put in stairs that meet a certain tread requirement and things like that. There's a floor area bonus that applies to properties in downtown. So there's actually two incentives that apply only within downtown or within the South of Forest area zone. So the floor area bonus applies to properties in downtown. For category 1 and 2 properties, they get a fairly generous bonus of exemption from counting FAR up to 25% or 2,500 square feet, whereas category 3 and 4 buildings get somewhat lesser allocation. The transfer of development rights program is available to properties in downtown and in the South of Forest area, and again to category 1 and 2 properties, not 3 and 4, and it does allow for transfer of floor area to off-site properties within that zoning district. So moving on, within
Matt,
yes.
Just one comment here.
Yes.
When I looked at the word effect, I thought maybe a better term would be benefit.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I had a question about that one slide. So this is considered, it looks more like for commercial buildings, or does this also encompass residential?
It would include residential buildings within the downtown area. So
Within the downtown area?
That qualify as either category 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, depending on how it works. But yes, it's not limited by type within the area.
Okay.
The floor area bonus, so it's category 1 and 2, has that benefit or effect or benefit. And then category 3, not as much. So for example, the University Art Building would be category 3. So there's an example of change, if we include certain things to all buildings, for example, just as an example, then University Art Building would not have to apply for category 2 to get what it probably deserves. So,
Yeah, I think the point being that that for the floor area bonus, there are 2 tiers of incentives available based on the category. And how does that relate to the the comprehensive plan policy that says make incentives available to all properties of merit in all zones? So,
I might just add to this that some of these bonuses, other than the 1 and 2, those are available to all buildings in the downtown. And then if there's a seismic aspect of it, there's some additional things. So we don't have to cover everything here, but we might just work a little bit on that, Matt and I, on that category 3 and 4, to also note that others get the same benefit. It's not specific to categories 3 and 4.
Right. So there's buildings that require seismic upgrades that also have the same type of floor area bonus available to them, regardless of their historic value. So.
And any other building too.
Right.
One time.
Okay. So moving on, so that kind of covers the downtown area. Then if we look at the residential districts, there's an exception for lot size in terms of if there's an existing historic residence on a lot and it will benefit the preservation of that residence to allow for subdivision of a smaller lot than would normally be allowed and development on that lot, then that is allowed. So it essentially allows for smaller lots to be created and development to occur on those smaller lots in order to preserve older structures on their original lots, if you will. There's also the home improvement exception in the R1 district, which allows for up to 250 square feet of excess floor area, again with category 1 and 2 buildings only. And the gross floor area exclusion allows an exemption from gross floor area in the low-density residential districts, again with the stratification of category 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4. Or I should say there's an incentive available to category 1 and 2 buildings, and then there's another incentive available to categories 1 through 4. So any comments, questions there? Thank you. So moving on, another component of the city's preservation program is that Palo Alto is a CLG, or a certified local government, and we are certified by the State Office of Historic Preservation as a CLG, and that in order to be certified, Palo Alto does all of the things that are listed on this slide. These are the requirements to be a CLG. So we have a local preservation ordinance, we have a local historic board, we maintain a survey, we certainly provide for public participation in the preservation program, and we do perform the duties that are basically assigned to us by the state in terms of preservation.
I guess there's, maintain a system for survey and inventory of historic properties. We've been talking about updating it now for quite a long time, so maybe we need to catch up on that requirement.
Yeah, and it's true that I think every community in the state struggles with making sure its information is up to date. Palo Alto is not in a unique situation. I would say again, I think our survey, it is a solid survey. It includes a lot of great information, and we can talk a little about that more.
Yeah, there's one, Matt, there's
Yes.
one I thought I had here, the last bullet, right? Satisfactorily perform responsibilities delegated to it by the state. Is there any way you could outline kind of what those responsibilities that have been delegated to us are?
Certainly.
I think
It's the responsibilities that are listed above are part of those responsibilities in terms of being a CLG. It would also be if there was a Section 106 project that were occurring in this jurisdiction, the city would be responsible for. Section 106 is a federal regulation that requires review of potential historic impacts, similar to CEQA, but it only applies to projects that are receiving federal funding. So if a project like that is occurring here in the city is obligated to conduct the Section 106 review and transmit those findings to the state. So that's part of our obligation, is to take a lead role in the Section 106 review if that case occurs.
Yes.
Is there anything in the regulations that can deal with demolition by neglect?
There is a provision of the Historic Preservation Ordinance that talks about the requirements to maintain and keep a property in good condition. But essentially the enforcement or the penalties are no different than the enforcement and penalties that would occur for any other type of zoning infraction. So there's no special particular enforcement or penalties laid out for historic properties.
I would like to see that someday.
Yeah. There was a project, it was in 1988 when George Zimmerman, Fred Herman, and Ken Schreiber, I heard them discuss that there was some ordinance or something back then that if it was a historic district, it was a downtown property, if it was neglected, there was so many dollars per day fine. I'll see if I can dig that up, but anyway, I remember that from back then.
Yeah, I don't, but we do have the ability in our administrative penalties to assess on a daily basis penalties, fines. So that kind of goes through a hearing officer procedure. So that's a whole topic.
Okay, thanks.
So, so if we move on to the next slide, so in addition to having responsibilities as a CLG, Palo Alto gets benefits, of course, from being a CLG. So we're considered a partner with the California Office of Historic Preservation and other local jurisdictions in carrying out the state's preservation program as well as our own local programs. We have involvement in the state and federal programs. We have access to OHP's technical assistance resources, which is very beneficial. But I would say the single most important benefit that Palo Alto gets is access to federal funding for preservation activities, such as surveys, design guidelines, and building rehabilitation studies. And that access is through CLG grants, which are given out annually to qualifying CLGs like Palo Alto. And the last component of the preservation program, I'm sorry, I should ask, is there any comments on the CLG benefits? No, okay. And the last component of the preservation program is the California Environmental Quality Act, which of course is the state regulation that looks at impacts to the environment, including historic resources. And under the state regulation, historical resources include National Register and California Register listed and eligible properties, as well as properties that are listed in the city's inventory, as well as properties listed on the city's survey, which was adopted in 2000, and any other historic resource evaluations that are adopted by the city through a development review process. It applies to discretionary applications only, and projects that are consistent with the standards for rehabilitation, which of course are the standards that were adopted by the council, are exempt from further CEQA review. So generally, following the standards that have been adopted by the council exempts you from lengthy CEQA review in this process. Any comments on the CEQA? So that would essentially end my portion of the presentation, or at least as we've currently had it set up. And I should mention that if HRB members are interested in presenting any of the information that I've covered, please let me know, and we can certainly set it up so that HRB members are presenting more of this information. You know, that's entirely up to you, I would say. But I'm comfortable presenting this information as well. So.
I think we're comfortable there with you too.
Okay. So this next portion would be the opportunity for the HRB members to present the rehabilitation successes. And I'm calling them rehabilitation successes rather than preservation successes because rehabilitation, I think, emphasizes the idea that buildings do change over time, including historic buildings. And it also, I think, underscores the concept of adaptive reuse, that buildings aren't always going to be used as they were originally. So this is an opportunity. I think we can certainly spend some time. We've started a list, I know, of these types of success stories, But I think what we would want to do is sort of develop that list with the HRB members, get some materials like photographs, and we could scan them, and then we'd have them all integrated into the presentation.
I'd like to mention that we've had success in the past with an ARB council study session where we did have the before and after, and to the extent that rehabilitation also can cover an addition to a historic, a successful addition, I would encourage us to think of some projects like that, because again, to highlight how we are looking at expansion of buildings and achieving success there, I think that's important for the community to understand.
Chair Kohler? Yes. I would like to, we, as you said, made a list, and it turned out that most of them were public facilities, or buildings rather than residences. And of course, it's been a long time since we've been to the city council, and it takes time for our projects, once we see them, for them to finally be built. And I'd like to suggest 601 Melville, which is called the Theophilus Allen House, but most people think of it as Gladys Woodham's longtime home. And not only, in my estimation, was that a very special job in rehabilitating a large and important residence in town, but it's one that has a protective covenant on it, and Palo Alto Stanford Heritage holds that covenant. So there was that extra layer of somebody is really watching this program, and we were all invited to an open house to see it after it was finished, and in my mind, it was very, very successful.
What's the address again?
601 Melville.
What was the protective covenant?
What?
What is the protective covenant on that property?
That primarily the facade, you know, exterior be maintained. And so perhaps more information about that.
As I, having been around a long time, I think I worked on several homes around here, Professorville, and I don't think HRB was even invented yet. So there was hardly any controls on, now that I think about it, some of the second floor additions I did in Professorville, you just did it. You know, so now at least you have some understanding. I think the ones that we worked on came out fairly well, but it's surprising that even in those days, because Ken Halsman actually was one of the beginning persons who helped get HRB going, and then he was on the board for a while, and then I think he just thought it was too much for him. So that's a good thing to know. 601 Melville is. I've not really heard about that program. Have anybody else? So good.
I think on that project, isn't that, I know, the DeRosa's project? Yeah. So maybe we could reach out to her and ask her, say that we might want to include that as one of our success stories. I know her, so I can reach out to her and ask her. I think that there's been some publicity on that project. I think it's been in the paper. There's been articles written about it. So maybe we can get our hands on some of the written material that's been included on it.
Certainly some of that is also down in the archives files with Steve Steiger.
On the flip side, there are also a few projects down in the Professorville which had no control. You know, in those days, there was just some things were done, like tearing down an old home and putting up a tract house. Look down there on Emerson or whatever high. So that's distracting from what we're talking about today. So.
Well, I think that raises a good point. You know, currently, as designed, we're showing the successes that are based on the fact that projects have gone through the process that we currently have, including HRB review. if there are examples of projects that aren't successes because they did not have the benefit of HRB review, I think those are also good, potentially good things to demonstrate. And so
We have a major famous one that's, I'm not sure how much I'd want to talk about that, but anyway.
So, but I do think that this subject right here is something that the board is going to come up with. I mean, Matt's doing a wonderful job with all of his presentation, but I think this very subject is something that's where we step in. And I know that in the meeting that we had in the other, in the new meeting center, you had brought some photos. So it's an effort that you've already started doing, and maybe we can add to it. I mean, I could bring, I meant to do this, I have one project that I've done that I could bring and show you and see if it would be something that, it was a project I did at 450 Kingsley like 10 years ago.
Well, David
As a
Bauer and I
possibility.
worked on a project for the Kellermans on Emerson where we added a basement and added out the back, but from the street, it just looks, and actually there's a house next door we did as well, but you can't, there's no clue that it was ever worked on. You know, now it's been built for 9 or 10 years.
So would those kind of projects be a good candidates for presentation at the
Well, the
meeting?
one boards that I have are great. I was gonna get Beth down to my office and we'll figure out, I thought, I have those set up, so one of us, I can probably take photos of what they are now. So it'd be, what I have on those boards is what they were, and we should get a photo that says, here's what, these are all, gosh, 10 or 12, 15 years ago. So we just have before and afters of some homes that are, buildings are all right around the City Hall right here.
I mean, maybe we could come up with a presentation format or something that it all looks somewhat consistent. I don't know.
Are we interested in talking about the University Art Building at all, or is that?
Yeah.
No?
We have to wait for the after on that.
yeah, it's underway, it's not
Yeah.
completed, and yeah, I think we should focus on projects that are completed, you know,
Completely.
no permits still outstanding, that kind of thing.
Kind of off track, but a couple of my employees have actually been to the theater, Varsity Theater, and had coffee and stuff, and think it's fabulous. So.
I think it was one that was on our list that there had been some changes in an earlier proposal that I considered not a good idea, and then it came back to us without that canopy over the, yeah. So, you know, that might be a really good sample.
I would echo that, and by saying, as I mentioned earlier, having something, I mean, because there is on the backside facing the parking lot, modifications where they're appropriately done rather than the courtyard. So that's a nice project to highlight, because it does show adaptive reuse of a, you know, something that had a prior
Did you
use
say
as a theater.
inappropriate or appropriate?
Appropriate. I mean, it was analyzed under the Secretary of Interior standards. The changes were made. So I think that's that embodies both preservation of the courtyard as a courtyard without that other stuff that was prior application. But there were changes on the backside facing the parking lot that, you know, I think were sensitively done.
And of course, the old main library, which is now Rinconada, which I think is a marvelous sample of putting on an addition that is very respectful of the original building. I did have a question. Roger mentioned lifting a structure and replacing the foundation. Is this something that would come to us if it's in Professorville, or is this an over-the-counter kind of thing?
You did see one of these, right? The Kingsley project?
Pardon?
The Kingsley project, 221 Kingsley, I think is the address where they rotated it on the site.
Oh,
It did
no,
have
I'm not talking about that project. There are some other sort of smaller buildings in within the Professorville.
And you know
And
which
I'm
the
wondering
addresses are?
whether we would see that if it is simply a lifting up the building, redoing the basement, or rebuilding the foundation.
So if there's no exterior alteration to the building, it wouldn't be subject to the HRB review, because the action would essentially result in the building in its same
Better.
visual
Yeah.
state as it is today. If there was another component that changed the physical appearance, such as rotating it or lifting it up and, you know, increasing its height or something, that would constitute a visual change.
Okay, thank you.
So.
I was just going to mention with this project, the before and afters, maybe we can put that item on our agenda for next meeting to bring some of that stuff and take a look at it and kind of review it in preparation for presenting it at this meeting. So maybe Roger, you can bring back those boards. I remember those. Some of them were really great. Maybe we can take a look, and I can try to bring some information. I'm sure Martin has some information. I don't know.
For some reason, I also found that I didn't bring is I have a couple of pamphlets that were put out in the 20s or 30s of properties that were for sale. We're talking down here in just not that far from here, not Professor, but, and it's got all these great photos of Palo Alto as it was in the 20s and 30s. And I was going to make a board out of those. It's amazing how, well, it's not amazing, it's life. You know, the town has evolved and changed. And then when you drive, you know, my daughter used to live in Santa Barbara, and we stop in a lot of little towns off of 101 there, and some of them don't feel like they haven't changed at all. You know, they're basically all the old buildings. Martin?
Yeah, I think Board Member Margaret's comment about, yeah, just for our next agenda meeting, if we could do a little, yeah. And then also I would think, you know, so we can probably come up with 10 or 20 examples. You know, 1 or 2 may tell the story that we need to within our time limit, but yeah. So.
Yeah, I think if they're on board, they can look at what they want. There may be 1
Yeah.
or 2 that are on the boards that we can point out as saying this was a really, you know, if we were involved, some of us, we could say in the beginning, this building did not look at all like what it is now. And because of our input, it came to what you see today.
Yeah, and then time management will be part of our task too, of
Time
course.
management,
Yes, good.
it's not part of my life.
I just bring up one comment that's been brought up before about the amount of material we have here probably greatly exceeds the time that we have to look at it. And I personally think that the mayor and vice mayor are probably interested in what we're going to do in the future and not dwell so much on what we've done in the past. And of course, our success stories are nice to talk about, but really, what is our plan for the future? What do we see as the HRB providing a benefit in the future? What activities would we be involved in?
That's actually a pretty good point in a way that.
That's
with-
what I meant by time management.
Yeah, well,
We can't
if
live
have,
in
We
the
need to
past.
show some successes, but one of the big things, looming questions is, what are we going to do about the mid-century modern structures that at this point need to be dealt with in some way, or many of them are going to be gone?
Yeah, I think we should focus more on the issues that we see coming up in the future and what we see as the HRB's role to benefit the city.
So if I may, I realize that we are spending a lot more time on the presentation than will actually occur when it's given. The idea is that I would move through these initial slides much more quickly, and I think, you know, it's clear that some of this information needs to be condensed, and I certainly will work on that. I think your point is very well made, though, that really the council is wanting to know where do we go from here.
Exactly.
And I've got a couple more slides that I think address that, and we can maybe talk about that a bit more. So
Could we put those up front and have that at the front of the presentation and talk about the other stuff later on so we don't run out of time?
Well, we were asked to organize it in a certain way, that there be a brief introduction to the program, and I'm really realizing that the emphasis has to be on brief, and so I will work on that. But I think what we want to do is make sure that we get through that in those initial steps quickly and get on to what you're suggesting, which is the real benefit of meeting with the council.
Yeah, I agree with that, because there are, how many new council members?
quite a few.
Huh?
New council? Right.
No, how many new ones from past? Well, our
Yeah.
Tom is a new
Yeah,
person.
so three, I mean, so that's, I agree with Board Member McKeon, I think the gist of what the council hears from us is here are the challenges coming up, here are some recommendations of what to do about those things. But history, say hello first and then introduce the new stuff. Yeah, but briefly, thanks.
Well, I see,
Again, I would just reiterate that having paper copies, and we do give these to the city clerk on the Friday before the meeting, so the council members will all have these in a packet,
Yeah.
I believe. And so really, when Matt presents these, he could say, this slide shows all the comprehensive plan policies. Next slide, because they've already seen it. So, the speed at which he can move through these
yeah.
is definitely adjustable.
Okay.
And before we leave rehabilitation successes, I just wanted to make one more suggestion that a rehabilitation success can also be a property that was that gained incentives, and the preservation or rehabilitation of that property is related to the incentive programs. For instance, a property that was preserved through the transfer of development rights, if there's a good example of that, or a property that benefited from one of the other incentives that we offer. Those might also be good examples if we know of those. So anyway, moving on. And so these the next few slides I've prepared as HRB recommendations, but these are your recommendations. These should reflect what you're thinking. And if they don't, I really need that input. I need to know how you want this information presented. And if these do truly reflect your recommendations and the issues that you want to discuss. So the first one is to finalize the Professorville design guidelines. I'm pretty sure that is a priority of the board. As we know, the existing draft guidelines, a lot of work has gone into those. I believe they are an excellent set of principles, but I'm not sure they provide the specific kind of guidance that we really want to be able to present to people so that they don't have further questions of interpretation. So the idea is that if we can get a CLG grant to pay for most of the consultant costs to produce that sort of truly high quality definitive product, why wouldn't we go ahead and do that? So this is something that staff has put out there as a possibility, and so I'd like to know if this does reflect one of the board's recommendations.
Well, yeah.
I was going to say yes too, and here it is in the newspaper right here. If you get the date of this, the last sentence talks about this downtown property. The article says, yet the bulk of concerns from the public revolve around the size and modernist design of a project and its compatibility with its historic surroundings. So, yes.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the next, I'm sorry, Board Member Bundenberg, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think this one is, again, a very, very important thing to deal with. And again, I like the idea of a CLG grant because it is complex to put this sort of thing forward. And I know that there are cost concerns at the city council level, and there's a finite amount of time that staff can expend on one project.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
let's move on.
So, so the next recommendation I believe that the HRB has made, and I think I heard it today as well, is that there needs to be, we need to be able to address the modern era resources that are in the city. And just to review that the city survey was last updated in 2000, and at that time, the survey pretty much evaluated properties citywide up to about World War II or into the 40s. And I do believe it really did an excellent job of identifying the resources up to that point in time. it's the information gap is basically between World War II and the present day, or whatever we want to call the end point of historic eligibility, which I would say around 1970. So the gap in time that we have in terms of evaluating properties and knowing what the resources are is in that period of time. So if we can garner a CLG grant to hire a consultant to produce a context statement, which would then allow us to either propose surveys of mid-century modern properties, or if property owners, as they want to come in one by one and evaluate their properties through development projects, we would have a firm research basis upon which to let people proceed with that. Honestly, I think it would take a lot of the guesswork out of the evaluation of mid-century modern properties. So that again is, I think, what I've heard is a recommendation from the board, and so I'd like to know if that is something that the board agrees with.
Yep,
Okay,
sounds good.
excellent, thank you. And next up is the idea of expanding the city's sticks and carrots, and this has been mentioned in a couple different ways, and we kind of previously looked at how the incentives as well as the review procedures apply to some of the inventory properties in different ways. And so the idea is that if you're expanding either a stick or a carrot, you should do both at the same time, that it should be a balanced approach. So currently, Category 3 and properties located outside of downtown and the districts don't have the same review procedures or the same incentives available to them that the other properties do. And also the National Register and California Register properties also are not part of that review process or the incentive program. So the idea is, does the board want to open up that topic with the council? I should mention that to do that, we're actually looking at making ordinance changes, which are a fairly big deal. That's different than adding research documents to our program, which we've talked about doing previously. And I might mention also that an ordinance change of this magnitude is usually done in combination with something like a comprehensive plan update process, and we are beginning a comprehensive plan update process. So rather than move forward independently with something that might affect an ordinance, it's always good to do that in concert with the comprehensive plan update. And so that might be something that the board members might want to discuss again with the council.
Do you think the use of the term sticks?
I'm sorry, your mic isn't on.
Mine.
Sorry. Yep, the use of the term sticks is kind of puts a connotation of a negative, like you're going to the Inquisition when you go to the HRB. Maybe something a little softer might be more appropriate.
Certainly. The only reason I use sticks is because sticks and carrots is seen as sort of a two-part.
We're not bad guys,
Two-part program. No.
No.
So,
But
yeah, I think sticks might give a kind of we're the Inquisition. That's it.
I mean, that translates to requirements and incentives. I mean, as more,
Yeah.
right? Sticks are the requirements.
I don't know what the good substitute word would be, but I think sticks is a little bit of,
Sticks covered with gloves.
gives us a bad name or something.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we'll stop using the term sticks and carrots. I was using it only as a way because I think it's a fairly common term to identify. On the one hand, you have things that might be seen as undesirable, but on the other hand, you have things that are desirable, and they balance each other out. So we'll think about ways of rephrasing that. So
Like for carrots, you could use benefits. I'm not sure what
Sure.
to use for sticks.
requirements and benefits.
Requirements? I don't know.
Yeah, but benefits says it's something good. Roger?
Yes.
Just for quick bit of information, things that have the state of California registered historic landmarks are the Squire House, the Hostess House, that's MacArthur Park, Elwell site, and HP Garage, Ronald Brione's house, site of the Sarah Wallace House, and the site of the co-invention of the integrated circuit. And that list has not been upgraded since this history book came out in '93, so there may be others that have been added since then. So it's kind of an interesting spread of.
She's talking about California, but yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you. So the next two slides just show the category 3 and properties, category 3 and 4 properties that we're talking about that would be affected by potential expansion of requirements and benefits, as well as the National Register and California Register properties that are not on the inventory. And I'm not sure if these are
What's the,
slides that will stay in the presentation or not.
What's the big black box area there on the Embarcadero? Oh, Gamble House, okay.
Yes, the Gamble property.
Oh, I see up there, okay.
And the last slide, or second to last slide, is some other recommendations that I've heard some discussion about from HRB members, but I'm not sure how we want to present this information. It's really, again, looking at aspects of the city's ordinance and how the review is occurring. And so I would really like to get some guidance from the HRB as to, and I would also recommend or remind the HRB members that some HRB members are actually be presenting this information. So this is not information staff is presenting. So how do you want this information to be presented? How do you want it worded?
I was just wondering, the Green Meadow defined is pretty obvious. Actually, my office mate, Mike Cobb, former mayor, lives right in the middle of that and knows all about it. But then I noticed across the Alma, there's this dotted line with some sort of shaded area. That's where I live. And I didn't know we were in. Is that indicating an historic structure? I mean,
No, that's just the city's city boundary.
So that's Los Altos and Mountain View.
Can I use your mouse real quick?
Boy, I guess I'm not sure I'm understanding how.
The shaded areas are Mountain View and Los Altos there, next,
Okay,
on the south
so
side of town.
I see the problem is that the, right above the N in green is not actually Charleston. It's over where the G is. It's hard to see. I see. So that little area is on the other side of the creek. Okay. I guess one thing that we've encountered in working with some people in the neighborhoods is that there's, in the IR process, the individual review of homes where the neighbors come out and say this is an historic neighborhood when it really isn't because no one's done anything. But I don't know if we want to even bring that up, but I'm just saying that there are, in the semi-ICOR looking homes and districts, there are a lot of neighborhoods, not overly large neighborhood, but a lot where a lot of the old homes built in the 50s are still standing there the way they were. So.
I might just, on that point, just alert the board to the fact that there are several neighborhoods with the Eichler homes and one-story homes that are engaging with staff in preparation to submit a single-story overlay for quite a few neighborhoods in South Palo Alto. So that's, we'll let you know about the status of that. But if we do get an application like that prior to this joint meeting, that will be, something that is perhaps of interest.
So just out of curiosity, if you're looking into it, does that mean that everyone in the neighborhood knows that they're going into it? Or, I mean, there may be some people living there have no clue that this neighborhood is being recommended to be changed. I mean, so right now, until it's an official change, you can still do a two-story home. Is that correct?
Correct. And I don't want to take too much away from the presentation, but just since I brought it up, these single-story overlay initiatives, rezonings, are by neighborhood initiative and through more than unanimous support. They need 70% support. So there currently are some neighborhoods that are meeting in advance of submitting an application to the city. So again, I don't know if it'll be in, by the time you have this meeting with the council, but it's just a matter of interest as we talk about mid-century modern.
It's a topic that's been coming up quite a bit lately, so. Okay, Matt?
So I think we're just kind of wrapping up here on the last slide, HRB recommendations. One thing that the ordinance allows for is staff level review of minor alterations. I think we'd like to work with the board to determine what exactly are minor and major alterations, and so that we have some some definition that we can provide to staff, to owners. So I don't think that, perhaps the first item is not that major an item, but I think the next three are items that we would certainly like to get some HRB input on as to how you'd like to discuss that with the council. The ordinance currently allows for demolition moratoriums in some cases, but not actual decisions to be made. I think that that's something that has been brought up by board members. Also, the issue of whether a project is subject to discretionary or non-discretionary permit has come up a number of times. And there's also been questions from board members and from applicants about the idea of voluntary compliance and what that means in terms of the HRB review. So I don't know if these are things that the HRB wants to discuss with council or not, or if they have relationship to any of the existing comprehensive plan policies and programs or not. I'd leave it up to the HRB members to look into the existing comprehensive plan program and policies and see if there's anything that relates to these that would then be of interest to the council.
My first reaction is that this is this whole page is at least one meeting of time and discussion with all these items, and to have it, it's good to have it in the list with the council, and if they ask us, we said we just really haven't, these are our topics of future items that we need to talk about. I'm not sure if we want to get into too much with this meeting. I don't know if we'll ever get to this page, but all these items are pretty important, and we kind of dodge bullet with them. We play dodgeball with them all the time when they come up at different projects. So to have, it may be HRB recommendations, or it could even say recommendations and future HRB research discussions. Does anyone else feel that?
I would suggest changing that title to other possible areas of HRB interest,
Oh, that might be okay.
rather than HRB recommendations.
Yeah, because we haven't done anything to recommend anything yet. That's a good phrase. What about other
just something that,
other board members like that idea? Okay.
It sounds like we kind of wanted to end the presentation with what's coming up in the future. That's what. I think that was what Matt was trying to say, is let's end the presentation with what's on the horizon for us. And maybe instead of having those items like the mid-century category, instead of having an answer for that, we just put that's on our horizon. We identify that as an area that we're looking at and wanting to put more thought into. And some of these things might be things that are on our horizon. Maybe they're not things that we've resolved yet.
Yeah, future goals / discussions or some title of that nature I think that's a good way to put it. Because if we say recommendations, they're going to say, well, what are you recommending?
I don't think you want to buy into that right now.
And I think
Martin,
it's,
go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Martin.
I was going to say, I think it's an opportunity to also get some comments and recommendations from the council as to how to proceed on these in terms of how they see them as priorities as well.
Actually, them going away with that's a good way to say it. It says our future goals and city council, well, we welcome your input as to where we should be headed on this. That might be another, not phrase it that way, but that's fine. Martin.
I guess one of our earlier meetings, council meeting, oh, did I say sir? Thank you, Chair. One of our other council meetings, new council member Du Bois' comment to us was, give us proposals for some kind of recommendations or changes.
Yeah, he did say that, so.
So that ties into, I think, Michael McKinnon's comment about, okay, let's base something, okay, for the future concern,
Yeah.
here's a proposal
Yeah.
for the council to consider. So.
Yeah. Well, I think your charts on page 17 is probably the most important of all these charts right here. One thing that I did mention at our previous meeting is that we have never looked at bungalow courts and their relevancy as historic properties in like a little mini historic district in their own right, but bungalow courts are recognized as having historic merit. And there are a few of them in Palo Alto.
Actually, you know what, I have these two dogs at the office every day, and with one of our walking is just south of us, behind the Safeway, and in that street there, which is, I can't remember, but it has in that whole little neighborhood, there's a number of bungalow courts in there.
There's
They were
one-
done in the 50s, I think,
Yeah,
and,
there's one on Homer Street, there's one on University Avenue.
yeah, there's, well, yours are a little older than the ones I'm looking at, but there are things that were done in the 40s in that neighborhood that have,
But I think that's one area we should,
that's a
they're
good point.
quickly disappearing as the mega homes show up there, and the developers would like to come in there and take those down, but we should look at those as having historic merit and providing character to the city.
Chair.
Yes.
I would see that, that page 17 is extremely important, because I think we do need to move ahead rapidly on this sort of thing, and to say, oh, it's one of our future goals. Somebody puts that back a little further off, and I think that this one really merits more immediate attention, and I'd like to see the council get that word.
Okay.
Thank you. I do think that in terms of, what's currently laid out as recommendations, I think the first two are clearly ready to go, right? They're on the launching pad. That would be finishing the Professorville design guidelines and the modern era context statement. So maybe those are singled out as, projects that are ongoing or ready to begin. And then the next two slides are more areas of interest, as Board Member McKinnon indicated. And so maybe there's a separation between those two categories.
Just as a summary, I think your draft and this outline is really, really good, in the sense that we have never done or prepared anything like this to the council meetings that we've ever had. We've always had a little one-page kind of handwritten thing as to what we thought we were going to talk about, but this is really a very, I don't want to use the word clever, but it's a very good package to have handy, and can be even a handout at the development center, maybe, when people get in there and talk about their historic home. Well, you can say, well, here's the HRB's packet that was submitted to the city council with, I don't know if that's necessary or not, but I'm just saying, to have this in their packet to look at over the weekend, when they come to the meeting, it's not totally, oh my gosh, what are they going to talk about? They will have read all these pages, well, maybe, but they'll at least looked at some of them and caught their eye with, oh yeah, I've had several people call me about Professorville. That's good that they're going to talk about that. Or what are we going to do with the bungalows? So I think this is really I can see where you've done a great job on laying this out. So I think this is I just think it's really an important little packet to have here that will be of great use for not only us in council, but for citizens. So it's, in fact, as we go through it, and maybe you do after the meeting, possibly we do an update that's embellishes what came out of the meeting or not, and then it could be used as a pretty nice little handout. I don't know if you'd make thousands of them, but to have them available would be quite good. And you just take it a step further. I don't know what you call it, but you could say Historic Resources Board statement of action or something, and list the board members, your names, all that, and even the council members. So I don't know if I'm overstepping this thing, but to have, we've been kind of a cloak and dagger board, you know, not many people know about us. So to have this available, even online, would be really something. Because I like the way it kind of states all the things we keep talking about, and it's got it broken down. I think it's be quite good. So,
I think hasn't there been something like that in the past? It was like a little booklet that was similar to the single-family guidelines that, I might have one in one of my
I
old
have one.
files that I can dust off.
Yeah,
That
I
it was-
have one
it was
too. I'll
And it
find
even listed the inventory of homes that were on the historic category. I mean, there is a precedent for that. But that was also, that leads me to my next question. In the last meeting, Matt had organized some items and assigned our names to them. And I don't see that here, but one of those, I wrote it down because I was assigned to design tools, which is sort of what Roger's talking about. Design tools, lack of district design tools that provide practical advice and examples. So maybe that's something that would be incorporated into that. But is that still going to be a part of our presentation, those little items that you had sort of paired us up on, and want us to that's part of our, when we participate in the presentation, or
So I think it's really up to the board who wants to present what information. I did reorganize that section a little bit differently, so it reads a little bit differently. Now it's organized as HRB recommendations, and it sounds like we'll reorganize it again as a different way to present that information. I guess the design tools item would be the equivalent of the Professorville design guidelines slide. In other words, recommending that we finish developing that design tool. So, you know, if that's a slide that you're interested in presenting, you know, it's up to the board members to, I think, assign themselves. These were really, they weren't assignments, they were really just suggestions. And so in this version, I've, you know, pulled back from that and just kind of let you all decide, you know, how you want to present the information.
I think there is on the individual review guideline booklet, the professional, I think they are being duplicated with the Professorville comments in there, because I have one. Is that right, Martin? I think you get an IR, you know, what you can do and can't do, but some of the HRB Professorville comments are in there as well, or not.
But that was a draft, so that's not handed out to the public.
Oh, okay. Cloak and dagger then, okay.
Well, if you wanted to make sure that you got enough time in here, you could pass this out, and as Roger said, the council could read this over the weekend.
Yeah.
And your opening statement would be, now that you've read this material, what are your questions?
Yeah, that's true.
Get right to
That's
it, you know.
Well, thank you all for your comments.
Great.
And we'll continue to try and improve the presentation, and you'll probably see another version of this in your packet for the next meeting. And I guess just to summarize that we will, I guess the board has decided that we want to populate slide 15 or as many slides as we want to have to demonstrate the rehabilitation successes. So at the next meeting, I think we want to kind of finalize that list of rehabilitation successes and try to get, you know, materials such as photographs and things like that we want to include in those. Thank you.
I saw this in this morning's paper. It's a little out of our zone, but this fellow has bought the Brooksdale Lodge, which is over there on your way to Santa Cruz on the side street. spending $3 million to fix it up. Now, in our old, when we used to go over there a lot, but we went to this several times for lunch and things. So it was built in 1890, and it's really going to be quite a feature at some point. Yes.
I'd like to ask the chair, I'd like to be able to leave, I've got another meeting, so about 10:20, I'd like to leave the HRB meeting. So we have one more item on our agenda here. So.
We do?
Yeah, the Mills Act.
Mills Act.
Oh, boy,
I'm not sure I'm ready to talk about the Mills Act.
no.
So if I may just a few words to introduce, I believe that there was a request to put the Mills Act item on as a discussion item for this meeting. And so I did provide some information on Mills Act information from communities across the state, as well as some information from the OHP. I really haven't organized this as a in a way that would facilitate the discussion. So it's kind of up to the HRB to, I think, lead the discussion or ask staff questions on the Mills Act.
I would suggest that now that we have this, we all take a chance to read it over before we start discussing, because it looks like a very, I like the way each city has their own breakdown about it, which is good. So I'm not really prepared to be able to speak with any known quality.
I feel that it was extremely helpful to see these, and I know that Board Member DeSico is one person who's actually living with it, and she's not here today. Simply to know that the training sessions that I've had on the Mills Act have presented it as a fairly powerful tool for preservation.
Yeah, for some reason I remember going to several Mills Act meetings and things a long time ago. So.
Well, I think Pat's got her Coronado properties under the Mills Act, so she has probably the best experience with it of anybody on the board here.
Yep. So I'm suggesting we pass this on to the next meeting or the meeting after. Any others? Is that what, do we have to make a motion to postpone this? No? We vote to continue this item to a future meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. I think that's done okay. Okay, call to order. But it says here 757 College Avenue. Is that something we're supposed to talk about today?
Oh, that was the continued item. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And just to inform the board that the applicant requested a continuance because what they're doing is they're requesting that a property be removed from the inventory because they believe it doesn't meet the basic requirements. They are ultimately interested in perhaps developing the property. What I informed them was that in addition to answering the question of whether or not a property belongs on the inventory, for them to proceed, they will also need to address CEQA. In other words, does the property qualify for either the National Register or the California Register? The evaluation that they had submitted didn't include the California Register and the National Register evaluation. So my recommendation to them was to supplement their evaluation so that it also included that information, so that when the board and ultimately the city council considers the item, they'll be looking at it from all those different perspectives. And I think that gets the property owner a level of certainty that they need to proceed with their plans. So thank you. And I don't believe staff has any other announcements, updates, reports, or comments.
Okay. Anything else? And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. And just be careful of the crowd. Don't hurt yourself getting out of the building.